The ER doctor looked at him and said, "This fall didn't happen because you're old. It happened because you've been sitting too much." That sentence stops people cold, because it cuts through the lie most seniors are told every day, that declining health is just normal aging, something inevitable, something you're supposed to accept quietly. It's not. Here's a harder truth, one nobody likes to say out loud. Being alone in peace is healthier than being surrounded by people and living in constant stress. Loneliness can hurt, but chronic stress, resentment, fear, and instability hurt faster. After 65, your body keeps score differently. Your heart, your joints, your immune system, they don't care how busy you used to be, how important you once were, or how much you sacrificed for others. They care about one thing only: how you are living right now. At this stage of life, health is no longer built on big achievements. It's built on small, quiet things that protect your dignity. Things most people overlook. Things no one brags about. Things you only realize matter when they start disappearing. The problem is, nobody prepares you for that shift. You spend decades chasing the wrong scoreboard. Career titles, money, approval, staying useful to everyone else. Then suddenly, you're retired, the noise fades, and you're left alone with your body, your thoughts, and your habits. That's when the real test begins. And that's why so many people after 65 feel confused, anxious, or quietly exhausted, even if nothing is technically wrong. Here's what most health advice gets wrong. It talks about years added to your life, but not life left in your years. Because surviving longer doesn't mean living better. So today, I'm not talking about vitamins, workouts, or miracle cures. I'm talking about the foundations that quietly keep older adults strong, physically, mentally, and emotionally. The thumbnail might say 5 things, but I'm giving you more than that. I'm giving you the real checklist people discover too late. Usually after a fall, a hospital stay, or a sleepless night staring at the ceiling. Count them as I go. By the end, you'll know exactly where you stand. And listen carefully to this part, because it matters. If you have even 3 of these things in your life right now, you are ahead of most people your age in America. That's not motivation talk. That's backed by decades of public health research, geriatric studies, and one uncomfortable fact. Most seniors don't decline because of age. They decline because the foundations collapse one by one, unnoticed. These are not dramatic losses. They happen quietly. A little less movement, a little more bitterness, one fewer phone call, one bill that creates anxiety, one morning where getting out of bed feels heavier than it used to. Put together, they change everything. If you're watching this and thinking, "This feels uncomfortably familiar," that's not a coincidence. It means you're paying attention. And attention, at this age, is power. Because once you see what truly matters, you can protect it or rebuild it before your health forces the decision for you. And if you're watching this video right now, believing that health decline after 65 is just normal and unavoidable, that belief is completely wrong. Stay until the end. What you're about to hear could change everything. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Let's start with the first thing people lose without realizing it, the one that decides whether your days still pull you forward or slowly let you drift. Ray is 73 years old. He lives in a small Midwest town most people pass through without noticing. Indiana. One main street. One grocery store. One diner that still knows your order if you've been coming long enough. Monday morning. Ray is sitting in his car with the engine running, parked in his own driveway, hands resting on the steering wheel. He's been there longer than he realizes. 5 minutes, maybe 10. He's not late. He's not early. He's not going anywhere urgent. That's the problem. After retirement, mornings change. There's no alarm you have to answer. No place that will notice if you don't show up. The world doesn't push back anymore. Ray finally turns the engine off and goes back inside. The TV is off, not muted, off. The house is quiet in a way that feels heavier than silence. He opens the kitchen cabinet and stares at a row of pill bottles. blood pressure, cholesterol. One for sleep he doesn't always take but keeps just in case. None of them feel dramatic. None of them feel dangerous. That's how most decline starts. Quietly, politely. Ray isn't sick, not really. His doctor tells him his numbers are acceptable for his age. But Ray notices things. He notices that standing up from the couch takes an extra second now. He notices he avoids stairs without consciously deciding to. He notices the house feels bigger at night and smaller during the day. And then something small happens. He steps outside to take the trash out. Nothing heavy. Nothing rushed. His foot catches the edge of the driveway. He doesn't fall. He just stumbles. But for half a second, his body doesn't respond the way he expects it to. That half second stays with him. Inside, his heart is pounding harder than it should. Not from pain, from fear. Because in that moment, Ray understands something clearly for the first time. If he had fallen, no one would have seen it. There's no emergency music playing, no dramatic collapse, just a realization settling in his chest. Later that afternoon, Ray checks his phone. No missed calls, no new messages. He had expected one. He doesn't know why. He just had. His daughter is busy. His son lives 2 states away. That's normal. That's life. Still, the quiet lands heavier than before. That evening, Ray sits at the kitchen table with a legal envelope he hasn't opened yet. Rent adjustment notice. He already knows what it says. Everything costs more now. Heating, groceries, insurance, nothing catastrophic, nothing illegal. Just another reminder that stability isn't guaranteed. It has to be protected. Ray doesn't panic. He doesn't complain. He doesn't call anyone. Instead, he does something older adults do more often than people realize. He starts taking inventory. Not of his money, not of his mistakes, of what he still has. He asks himself simple questions. Can I still get up and move without help? Can I get through the day without feeling afraid of the night? Is there anyone I could call if I needed to hear a voice? Do I sleep, or do I just lie down until morning? These aren't philosophical questions. They're practical, physical, immediate. Ray remembers something his doctor once said in passing. Most health problems after 70 aren't sudden. They're cumulative. That word sticks with him. Cumulative. Little losses that stack up until one day they tip you over. Ray realizes something else too. Nobody warned him that aging wouldn't feel dramatic. Nobody told him it would feel like this, like slowly letting go of things without noticing the exact moment they slipped away. He thinks about friends who stopped going out after dark. Neighbors who just don't feel like walking anymore. People who used to say, "I'm fine," right up until they weren't. Ray doesn't want to become that story. Not because he's afraid of death, but because he's afraid of shrinking. He looks around the room. The chair he always sits in. The calendar on the wall with nothing circled this week. The quiet that used to feel peaceful and now feels uncertain. This isn't about excitement. It's not about doing more. It's about not losing what still works. Ray understands something most people don't realize until it's too late. At this age, you don't need more excitement. You need more stability. Stability doesn't come from doing more. It comes from knowing why you get up and knowing you still can. That's where the first 2 things begin. The first thing older adults need to protect is this: a reason to wake up in the morning. Not a goal, not a passion project, not something impressive, just a reason. Ray doesn't find his by reading a book or watching TV. He finds it by accident. The woman next door knocks one afternoon. Her name is Linda. She's rushing. Her dog is pulling at the leash. "Any chance you could watch him tomorrow morning?" she asks. "Just 20 minutes. I have an early appointment." Ray hesitates, not because he doesn't want to help, because he hasn't committed to a morning in a long time. "Sure," he says. The next day, Ray wakes up before the sun is fully up. Not because he has to, because something is waiting. He puts on shoes instead of slippers. He steps outside instead of sitting down. The dog is excited. Too excited, pulling, barking, alive. For 20 minutes, Ray walks. Not far, just around the block. It's not exercise, it's not therapy, it's a rhythm. The next morning, there's no dog. But Ray still wakes up earlier than usual. He makes coffee. He steps outside. He notices birds on the fence, the same ones he's ignored for years. The day after that, he walks to the diner at the same time he used to drive. Same booth, same waitress, same coffee. Nobody applauds. Nobody posts about it. But something shifts. Purpose after retirement is not a mission. It's a rhythm. Studies from the National Institute on Aging show that older adults with daily routines, no matter how small, have significantly lower rates of depression and cognitive decline. Not because they're busy, because they're anchored. Ray doesn't feel younger. He feels steadier. That's the first thing. Now comes the second. The second thing older adults must protect is their ability to move, especially their legs. This part scares people because they think once it goes, it's gone. That's not true, but it will go if you stop using it. Carmen is 70. She lives in California. Suburban, flat sidewalks, good weather. 2 years ago, she tripped stepping off a curb. Nothing dramatic, no broken bones. But the fear stuck. She stopped walking as much. Then she stopped walking outside. Then she started sitting more to be safe. Within months, her sleep got worse. Her blood pressure went up. Her confidence disappeared. Her doctor told her something simple and brutal. After 65, muscle loss accelerates fast if you don't use it. According to studies published in the Journal of Gerontology, adults can lose up to 3 to 5% of muscle mass per year after age 65 if they're inactive. That loss doesn't just affect strength. It affects balance. It affects circulation. It affects sleep. It affects mood. Inactivity creates a chain reaction. Carmen didn't start going to the gym. She didn't buy equipment. She started walking inside Walmart. 1 loop, then 2. Holding the cart at first, then letting go. Her sleep improved before her legs did. Her mood lifted before her speed increased. Movement sent a signal to her brain. We're still alive. That's the part most people miss. Walking isn't about fitness. It's about keeping your world from shrinking. Ray notices this now. When he walks, his thoughts don't pile up as much. When he sits all day, everything feels heavier. When your legs work, your world stays big. You can go to the store without planning. You can leave the house without fear. You can stand long enough to cook, clean, live. Once movement goes, independence follows. Ray understands that purpose got him out the door, but his legs are what keep him free. That's why these two things always come first. A reason to wake up, and the ability to move toward it. Everything else depends on them. And Ray is about to learn the hard truth about what happens when the body keeps moving, but the mind stays stuck somewhere else. Ray is moving more now. He has a reason to get up. His legs are working again, but something still isn't right. At night, when the house goes quiet, his body lies down, but his mind doesn't. That's when the third thing reveals itself, because health doesn't break only through muscles and joints. Sometimes it breaks through sleep. Derek is 77. He lives in New Jersey, retired, decent health on paper, walks most days, eats reasonably well. But Derek hasn't slept through the night in years. It started with something small, a wedding, a microphone, a joke that landed wrong. At his niece's wedding, Derek made an offhand comment. He didn't mean harm, but his brother took it as an insult. Words were exchanged, faces hardened. They stopped talking. No inheritance, no money, no big betrayal, just pride, embarrassment, and silence. Years passed. At night, Derek would replay it. What he should have said, what he shouldn't have said, what he wished his brother understood. His heart would race. His chest would feel tight. He'd check the clock, 2:13 a.m., then 3:40, then 4:58. Eventually, his blood pressure rose. At a routine appointment, the nurse noticed it immediately. "Any pain?" she asked. "No," Derek said. Then she paused and asked a question nobody else had asked him before. "Who are you still fighting in your head?" That question hit harder than any diagnosis, because Derek knew the answer instantly. Resentment doesn't announce itself as anger. It shows up as poor sleep, as tension in the chest, as a nervous system that never fully powers down. Medical studies published by the American Heart Association show that chronic anger and unresolved resentment can increase the risk of heart disease by nearly 20%. It raises cortisol. It keeps the body in a low-grade fight-or-flight state. That means your body never truly rests. Derek realized something painful. His brother wasn't suffering. He was. That night, Derek didn't call to apologize. He didn't explain. He didn't reopen the argument. He made a quieter decision. He stopped replaying the scene. Not perfectly, not instantly, but intentionally. He told himself something simple. I don't need to win this. I need to sleep. That's the part most people misunderstand. Letting go isn't about saying the other person was right. It's about deciding your health matters more than being right. Over time, Derek's sleep improved. Not because life got easier, but because his mind got lighter. Ray understands this now. He notices that on days he walks and follows his rhythm, he sleeps better. But on nights when old conversations creep back in, things he wishes had gone differently, his chest tightens again. That's when Ray learns the third thing older adults need to protect: the ability to go to bed without carrying someone else into the night. You don't need closure. You don't need an apology. You don't even need contact. You need peace. Because after 70, sleep isn't optional recovery. It's maintenance. And resentment is one of the fastest ways to steal it. Ray sits on the edge of the bed one night and realizes something quietly powerful. Movement keeps his body from shrinking. Purpose keeps his days from drifting. But sleep, real sleep, is what keeps everything from falling apart. And sleep depends on what you refuse to keep carrying. As Ray starts to let go, another pressure begins to surface. One that doesn't show up in his chest or his legs, but in his mailbox. The pressure Ray feels next doesn't come from his body. It comes from paper. Bills don't arrive with urgency. They arrive quietly, folded, polite, and relentless. This is the fourth thing older adults need to protect, and it has nothing to do with wealth. It's money that's enough, not luxury, not upgrades, enough to stand on your own without asking. Patricia is 71. She lives in Arizona, a small apartment. No view, no extras. Every month she sits at the same table with the same stack of envelopes, Medicare statements, prescription co-pays, electric bills that spike in summer and winter. She writes everything down. Groceries first, medication second, utilities third. There's no panic in her routine, just discipline. Patricia isn't rich. She never was. But she knows exactly what she can afford and what she can't. That knowledge gives her something many people mistake for money. It gives her calm. Enough money, she says, means I don't have to explain myself to anyone. That's the part most people miss. Enough money is not luxury. It's dignity. It means you don't delay medication to save face. It means you don't lie awake wondering which bill you can ignore this month. It means you don't feel like a burden just for being alive. Ray thinks about a man he knows from down the street. Same age, same town. Every month he calls his daughter. Not to chat, not to check in, to ask for help. The money always comes. But so does the silence afterward. Dependence has a cost no bank statement shows. Studies from the National Council on Aging report that nearly 1 in 4 seniors in the U.S. struggles with financial insecurity, not because they didn't work, but because rising costs outpaced fixed incomes. That stress doesn't stay in the wallet. It shows up in sleep, in blood pressure, in how people carry themselves. Patricia doesn't feel rich, but when she pays her own way, she feels solid. Ray understands this now. When the basics are covered, his mind doesn't spin. He doesn't avoid opening envelopes. He doesn't rehearse apologies he hasn't made yet. When the basics are covered, your mind can breathe. That breathing room matters more than people realize. Because once money anxiety takes hold, it infects everything. Your sleep, your patience, your sense of worth. Ray isn't chasing more income. He's protecting stability. That's what this stage of life demands. And as Ray steadies this part of his world, he begins to notice something else. Something money can't buy, but losing it costs even more. Once the bills stop controlling your breathing, something else becomes impossible to ignore. Silence. This is where the fifth and sixth things show up, quietly but powerfully. The fifth thing older adults need is not a social life. It's one real connection. Eleanor is 76. She lives in Vermont. No smartphone obsession, no social calendar pinned to the fridge. Every Friday night at 7:30, her phone rings. Always the same voice. They talk about nothing important. Weather. A show they both half-watched. A memory that doesn't need explaining. Sometimes they sit in silence together on the line. That's enough. Eleanor once said something that stuck. I don't need a crowd. I just need one real voice that knows me. That's not loneliness. That's connection. Research from Harvard's long-running adult development study shows that close relationships, not numerous ones, are the strongest predictor of long-term health and happiness in older adults. Not activity, not income, connection. Ray feels this absence now. He knows people, but knowing someone isn't the same as being known. One real friend does something medicine can't. They ground you. They remind you that you still exist outside your own head. Not a crowd, just one real voice. Then there's the sixth thing. And this one hits closer to home. Literally. The sixth thing older adults need is a place where they don't feel replaceable. It doesn't have to be owned. It doesn't have to be impressive. It has to be yours. Ray has lived in the same rented house for 12 years. Same porch, same view of the street, same worn chair by the window. The pictures on the wall aren't expensive, but they've been there long enough to feel permanent. That matters. A home isn't paperwork. It's the place where you don't feel like you could be asked to leave at any moment. When older adults lose that sense of security, stress spikes fast. Studies from the National Institute on Aging show housing instability is directly linked to increased anxiety, sleep problems, and accelerated cognitive decline. Ray understands this instinctively. When he sits in his chair, his shoulders drop. When he steps onto the porch, he feels oriented. A home is where you're not scared to be replaced, not by another tenant, not by a younger version of yourself, not by time. Without a real friend, days feel longer. Without a real home, nights feel heavier. Together, these two things do something subtle but essential. They hold you in place. Ray realizes now that stability isn't just financial. It's relational. It's environmental. It's knowing who might call, and knowing where you belong when they don't. As these pieces settle into place, Ray feels something unfamiliar. Not excitement, not relief, groundedness. And with that grounding comes one final question, the one that decides whether everything he's rebuilt actually lasts. Once you have stability, connection, and a place that holds you, there's one final thing that quietly reveals whether your life was built on solid ground. This is the last thing. And it's the one people are most careful to talk about, because it's emotional and it's personal. Nancy is 73. She lives in Texas, small house, quiet street, nothing fancy. Her phone rings often, not constantly but regularly. Sometimes it's her daughter calling from the car. Sometimes it's her son during a lunch break. They don't call for money. They don't call because they have to. They call because they want to. Nancy never reminds them how busy she was raising them. She never keeps score. She never uses guilt as glue. When they talk, she listens more than she speaks. She asks questions. She doesn't correct memories. She doesn't offer advice unless it's asked for. That's why the phone keeps ringing. Nancy once said something simple that explains everything. I made space for them to grow without trying to follow them. That's harder than it sounds. Many older adults say the same painful sentence. My kids never call. Sometimes that's distance. Sometimes it's time zones and busy lives. But sometimes it's history. Unresolved tension, too much control, too many expectations carried into adulthood. Nancy understands something many parents don't realize until it's too late. The goal of parenting isn't closeness forever. It's respect that survives independence. The best sign you did something right is this: they call when they don't need anything. That call says more than gifts, more than visits on holidays, more than money ever could. Ray feels this truth deeply. He doesn't blame his children, but he sees where silence grows when pressure once lived. He learns that relationships don't break suddenly. They thin out slowly, and they can only be rebuilt with space, humility, and patience. This last thing isn't about perfection. It's about tone. Did you make your children feel safe to be themselves around you? Did you let them leave without making them feel like they were abandoning you? Nancy did, and that's why her phone rings. Ray sits quietly with that realization, because when everything else fades, work, strength, noise, this is the connection that echoes longest. And now that Ray sees all 7 things clearly, there's only one question left. Now, take a breath, because this is the moment where everything comes together. I told you I'd give you more than 5 things. Here they are, clearly, honestly, without noise. Check them off, one by one. Do you still have a reason to wake up in the morning, something small that pulls you forward? Can you still move on your own, even if it's slow, even if it's just around the block? Can you sleep without carrying resentment, without replaying old fights in your head? Do you have enough money to live, not in luxury, but without begging or apologizing? Do you have one real friend, not a crowd, just one voice that knows you? Do you have a place that feels like yours, where you're not afraid of being replaced? And do your children still want to call, not because they need something, but because they want to hear your voice? That's the list. Nothing flashy, nothing trendy, just the foundations. Now here's where you stand. If you checked 5 to 7, you're not just doing okay. You're thriving. If you checked 3 or 4, you're ahead of most people your age, whether it feels like it or not. And if you checked 1 or 2, listen carefully. You are not stuck. Walking can be rebuilt. Daily rhythm can be created. Resentment can be put down. Awareness is the starting point. So let me ask you this. How many of these 7 things are still part of your life today? Leave a comment below, and be honest with yourself. I read every single one. They make the cup of tea I'm sipping feel a little warmer, a little sweeter, knowing there are real people on the other side of this screen, taking a moment to reflect on their lives. And if this video helped you understand your heart, or your life, a little better, subscribe to the channel. Because next time, I'm going to talk about something many people over 70 never see coming. 5 common everyday foods you should stop eating right now, because they quietly damage your health and your heart, without you even realizing it. You won't want to miss that. Thank you for watching, and take good care of your heart.